All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I see a lot of faces who are just going from one panel to another panel. So I really admire your resilience here. So I'm extremely delighted to moderate the next panel, which is talking about the new wave of industrial change with exponential technologies. And having spent over a decade at the intersection of infrastructure investments and technology, including my time at Hitachi with the private equity infrastructure, I've witnessed myself how technology can truly transform traditional industries. And in my time, I have seen how data centers have evolved from single data storage facilities to the backbone of our digital economy, and now being even considered the factories of production of AI tokens or tokens of intelligence. I've witnessed how renewable energy transitioned from an alternative that it's now an imperative, and I've experienced how manufacturing and transportation truly has been revolutionized through digital technologies. But what I'm really excited today about being here is that we're not talking only about small incremental changes, we're talking about what's next. And this is what excites me. And as an investor and operator, I'm always in the lookout for the next big shift in the industry. So this is why I'm so particularly excited about having magnificent panelists today with me. We've been introduced already, but Erin Beilharz will show us how AI can transform and revolutionize something as complex as aviation operations. Limor, Schweitzer will talk about how MOV.AI is making autonomous robotics so accessible that have not been imagined just couple years ago. And then we have Johansson really spearheading Bosch's strives in smart manufacturing and the Lighthouse projects, and he will be really showing us what Industry 4.0 really means on the ground. So let's start with the discussion, and let's start with something that talks about the breakthrough innovations that are happening right now in traditional industry. So Erin, I know you as the progressive maven. You're researching, discovering, but also implementing AI systems in Lufthansa. Can you talk about specific use cases that were striking, that were theoretical just couple years ago, and then basically what surprised you about those?
Yeah, so thank you. So a couple of years ago, there was a lot of activity with AI at our group company, so all over the airlines and also in the daughter companies. But it was mainly machine learning algorithms to try and optimize our flying, optimize our routes, helping us to make more money by tweaking the passenger offer, what you guys would be able to buy if you're booking a flight, and basically trying to optimize it all over the place. I was on a panel at DLD January 2022 with Philip Justice, who is from Google. He's the head of Europe for Google. And if you guys can remember back to that point, the journalist who was doing your job today, Robert, asked a kind of nasty little question of Philip and said, has OpenAI put you out of business, Google? It was very provocative, it was very below the belt, and it was extremely shocking because OpenAI was not a household name at the time. And just like this question caught Philip off guard a little bit, and it was a very pointed question. I think that what has happened in the past 2 years with regards to LLMs and what it opens up in terms of possibilities has caught a lot of companies a little bit off guard, and also society as well. So if we talk about 2 years back, we were really bullish on machine learning algorithms to reduce costs and to make our operations better. But now we are shifting over, just like I think most of society is, what does this mean for our employees? What does this mean for our operations? And what we see right now is a big shift and a pull towards investment, a little bit not away from machine learning, but much more focus on how can we automate all of the low-value processes that we have? How can we make them cheaper? How can we give more service to passengers? How can we put bots to take the weight of all of the administrative information flow to deal with servicing passengers? How can we reduce costs? How can we make this better? If somebody's flight has fallen out somehow, how do we get them the right information, and how are we able to enable this? We have a shortage of workforce in a lot of different areas of society, which is affecting large corporates. And I think that we have been, as a large corporation, kind of scrambling to get all of that homework done. And I think the next phase for us is going to be to go back and then relook at optimization, given the fact that now we have this extra, I don't want to say it's a tool and a tool, it's like a revolution that we can play with, a much cheaper, much more accessible technology.
I would start with a revolution, and there were a couple of points that you highlighted to me, which are a fantastic bridge to Limor, because you mentioned automation, you mentioned also sort of the challenges with the workforce that we're seeing today. And Limor, you're dedicated in really focusing on automating, on autonomous robots. Like, can you talk a little bit about your strides and your use cases that you're experiencing here?
Yeah, so in robotics, historically, the automation was required for the car industry, and it was about repeatability. So you need to churn out 250,000 cars in the next 3 months. And so every little detail mattered, and repeatability this is what it was all about. Then came kind of the age of automation of fulfillment centers, when suddenly Amazon and others need to fulfill, millions of orders per day, and the whole logistics of storage, temporary storage, retrieval, and then putting stuff in a box and shipping it. So in that world of fulfillment, you have the mobile robots that are autonomous, mostly within these huge warehouses, and they move around and replace people in the mundane work of moving things around. And we still need the people for picking, but that is also being resolved. So our hands are the one thing that we have, which is very difficult to replicate. To have a single actuator or a single machine that can deal with credit card size object and TV size objects. And so these are the kind of the challenges of the industry that are being addressed now. I think we have the technology. It's now everybody in the fulfillment business, but also in other businesses of moving stuff around. It's in hotels and hospitals, is now looking into this kind of automation, and it's scaling, especially coming from China, where things are on a huge scale. I think for me, the wow moment, or the ChatGPT moment in this business, is now relating to the potential of robotics on the consumer level. So historically, it was not really possible to give a lot of power to robots. If you think of your Roomba or your washing machines, they're contained. The danger is contained. As Spider-Man said, with great powers comes great responsibility. So you don't want to hurt anybody in putting a powerful robot at home. And now there's more and more things to artificial intelligence, the ability to do things like folding laundry, doing cooking or other dealing with hygiene and other stuff. And I think that is something that is a new kind of revolution of getting automation into the home So that these are kind of the stages. So from the car industry, repeatability through fulfillment centers and other, in order to replace people, cheap labor, what's called cheap labor. It's not cheap really. And then finally into the home.
So basically, I mean, we're talking about a global revolution, and we're talking about the execution that could be applied everywhere. Per, specifically, I mean, you're the leader, you're the general manager for Bosch in the Middle East, and this morning we had this extremely exciting, that I found, like, inauguration speech by the Excellency and the Highness, talking about sort of their division, the dedication, the commitment to transformation and change, not to become just a side player, but just be really part of the game changer here. So how do you leverage that specific dedication, this region, for Bosch and everything that you're doing here?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you to XPANSE to have this event in Middle East, because I think it's really the right spot to be at the moment, and I'm happy to be based in this part of the world. You are right. I think the ambitions and the injections that is going into position this, especially UAE being the front runner of this expansion, and the clear vision of being an international global player in that field is very, very exciting. We as Bosch, coming from the Industrial 4.0, you mentioned the lighthouse we have, can come with a lot of experience in the field. At the same time, we have some areas that is completely greenfield and some areas where have a lot of legacy. And that is, of course, super exciting in the greenfield approach to build up the factory of the future, to be part of the expansion of the Middle East and become a global player also from a Bosch perspective. I mean, we are coming from a legacy of around 250 factories ourselves globally, where we're collecting a lot of data, turning them to Industrial 4.0, which is, of course, with a legacy, another game than coming from a greenfield and a complete new factory. But we also have both sides here. We have the legacy of, like, the oil and gas, for example, where we have to enter this field step by step. One good example, I think, that is very exciting at the moment is digital twin. We do the sensors, we put into sensors into critical part of the manufacturing or the processes, and can do predictive maintenance of, like, critical infrastructure in this field of business. So it's both part, but again, to be in this part of the world at the moment is the right area and the right moment to be part of the globalization here.
Thank you, Per. And actually, coming from a conglomerate or a large enterprise like Hitachi, right, we're seeing disruptions are coming, but traditionally the industry sector is not known for being the disruptor here. And we had so many incredible presentations today by disruptors, and disruptors have one advantage, and I'm looking at you, Limor. Sometimes you can come in with a white paper and you can just kind of design your organization, you can design your culture, you can break things differently than a big corporation, right? Because you have the core business that you need to maintain. Either you're a stock market listed, or you have other shareholders looking at you, and then you have sort of the pivot towards the acceleration. So looking at skill sets, looking at culture and collaboration, maybe starting with you as a disruptor, Limor, what are the things that you see in the technology, human, and robot interaction first, and what are you witnessing sort of as an advantage maybe to overcome those challenges?
So within the industrial environment that we work in, which is logistics or hospitals, hotels, the challenge is that people are unpredictable. And so you need to give a lot of intelligence to the robots and a lot of safety measures to the robots so that they will not hurt people accidentally. One of the solutions in industry is to remove the people from the equation. So if you, historically that was the case in the car manufacturing, and there are some solutions in modern automation that remove the people, and therefore you can remove the intelligence of the robot and make it cheaper. So we are looking kind of at this cycle of, at the moment, that the cheap solutions are actually intelligent robots that work among people. And so it's a mixture of people with mobile robots that work among them, or in a production line, or moving stuff around. But the more reliable, the challenge is reliability of these new machines. So this is not the car industry where you have a history, or aviation history, where aviation or conveyor belts, where there's a big history of certainty around the electromechanical system. These new devices are built in small batches, and they go through evolution. And so you don't completely rely on them. You keep the people in as a backup. But eventually, the cycle will revert, and you remove the people, and you can make the robots more stupid. That's on the industrial side. And in the let's say on the service side, where it's foreseen that mobile robots will exist in the home and in the office, there you still need to really rely heavily on predictability, and the industrial safety regulations are very prohibitive to that. So we're looking at these kind of challenges of how to mitigate risk of hurting people versus the utility of the automation. Everybody would like to have, automation and rather than having unskilled labor, and so it's an interesting time to be in robotics.
So talking about unskilled labor and talking about very skilled labor, especially in traditional industries, I mean, you are going to have a lot of skilled people, traditional people. Now we're talking about the infiltration of organizations with different type of talent, right? I mean, changing the culture, attracting new talent. How do you manage as a leader, specifically also here, the cultural change, maybe just to enable even the next revolutionary step in that aspect, right? From the smart manufacturing perspective, how do you accelerate the innovation within your organization? Maybe you can share that.
That's a very good question. I think that is a challenge for all traditional companies to go through that process. But I mean, also if you look at, we are now in the Industrial 4.0, every revolution had the same kind of topic, and in the end it created more jobs, right? So looking from a skill set perspective, we have massive educational program. Does it mean that we can solve everything by that? No, not at all. We're going to have jobs that is not existing any longer, and we have that already. But on the other hand, we are increasing significantly on the programming, artificial intelligence part. I mean, we have today over 40,000 people that is only on the software part of our company, which was much, much less just 5 years back. And that is done by educational part and educating our people and associates, but also attract. And I mean, if you look at automotive industry, which is a major part of our business, it's a very attractive field of business. And we, with the legacy, also have huge experience in that field of business. And when it comes to the manufacturing part, we also have to change where the business goes down, like a combustion engine. It's a typical classic traditional business where we also transform the skill set of the associates into the field of hydrogen. And we do the electrolyzers, we do the SOFC, which is an educational part, is transformation of the factories itself, and it's more futuristic in the sense of the combustion engine. So it's a process, and it needs a very proper plan. I mean, we are a company with 440,000 people, which means when we transform, it's large scale and also huge responsibility to the associates itself. But I think with a good plan and seeing the transformation far ahead, it can work very well also.
Maybe a follow-up question to you. So if you have traditional, like your let's say, teams that are working on the core business, are you more looking at mixing the accelerators with the core business, or would you say it is smarter to keep core focused on the core business that you have, optimizing running efficiency, and keep basically the let's say the innovators separately, so they can just basically be on their own? This is a challenge that we all face also at Hitachi. So I was just kind of very interested if you can share your use
I have
cases.
to answer it in a way, because we are in so many fields of business. We have like the home appliance, where it's completely integrated, a connected dishwasher or a connectivity of the kitchen appliance is something that normally is very integrated. If you look at the automotive industry, it's very separated, because it's either electrification or it's the combustion engines and the parts of that. On the other hand, everyone would like to do automotive driving in the end, which is a combined one. So it's really depending on the topic and the task. Sorry for not giving a crystal clear answer on that one, but I think it's really depending on the sector of the business where you can have it fully integrated or completely separated. And I mean, each and every of our division go through a transformation. I can give you another example of power tools, where a drill driver is these days connected, and you can basically get a message that you have to do your service maintenance on your drill driver within a certain number of weeks. So each sector have its challenges, but also sometimes integrated and separated.
Right. And so you mentioned autonomous driving and security. In aviation, I mean, the aspect of safety, the aspect of we're running fully autonomous with human or less human intervention. How do you see that from a Lufthansa perspective, moving from how far I can automate versus how much human interaction I want to keep in those processes?
So we are in a very regulated industry, and I will not take this question on behalf of my company, but on behalf of my industry, in fact. We're in an industry where when there's a new aircraft approved by regulators, it's usually 8 years with a development of maybe up to 15 years. So when you talk about hydrogen, this is a very far away development. So there are some technologies already available, but in order to get it into flight mode and approved and everything, it's really a long breath. When we talk about things that you can automate quickly, and what we run for is anything to do with things that are not touching the aircraft are fair game. You can go as fast as you want. And you talk about, should you mix innovation with legacy business? You must do it, because if you just leave legacy business to its own devices, they are not necessarily keeping their ear to the ground with all of the new technology developments, and they can really miss some leapfrog moments that would make the business faster, cheaper, etc. When you talk about automation, what is possible, getting closer to the aircraft, you asked me about automated flying aircraft. This is not something that our industry is going to approve in the next. What is the prediction that I'm allowed to or shouldn't make? It's probably 30 years out. Let's see. It could be that it's going to be driven and be a bit faster because of all of the other automation, but we are already experimenting with real use cases in Vienna, in Frankfurt, in Munich, in Zurich, with automation around the aircraft. So with the vehicles, with the apron that you use to walk to your gate, that this is approaching the aircraft more gently with sensors, probably from Bosch. I don't know what's in there, but the service equipment around servicing the aircraft. But on the other hand, the aircraft is also very automated. We know, we've all heard an Airbus in flight mode is flying itself, except if you ever see that, it's not flying completely by itself. The pilots are still very much managing all of the different information feeds that are happening. They are making sure that the flight is not going to go into extra pockets of turbulence. They're really managing a lot of different complex information. The hope is of our industry is that there's more automation also in air traffic control, which is really holding us back at the moment. It's holding us back from a ESG perspective, from a carbon perspective, especially over highly regulated airspaces, because actually these airspaces are at their limits. So if you would take, we talk about not human out of control, but human out of operational control, and there's an observational functionality of an air traffic controller, for instance. In the future, you would have the capacity and capability to manage much more complexity, because you would not have a human brain which would have to be responsible of, I don't know, 70 aircraft in an airspace. It would be completely automated with prioritization on the different flying bodies and vehicles, and there would be somebody to make sure that this is working correctly, but it would be choreographed by machine learning algorithms. Then it goes into insurance. If there were to be something that happens or something was done wrong, who is liable? Is it the programmer? Is it the company who made the software? Is it the air traffic controller who still has the responsibility? Is it the pilot, and etc.? So we are seeing that automation is increasing, but flying air taxis and everything are going to have to happen in areas where the regulation is different. I'm coming from the European market. There's already flying taxis and aircraft flying autonomously in China very successfully. In a, I guess, POC coming into a more common thing that you might see. So that all of the things that we had been talking about, I would say 3, 4, 5 years ago, you see them start to push through to fruition now. But it's not, it's walking. It's not baby steps, it's not dreaming, it's walking, but it's not running.
So I like the baby steps. So we were talking about pretty much the breakthroughs of today, really like bridging in. Then we were talking about what are the key enablers of making it happen in a traditional industry. But we wouldn't be at XPANSE if you wouldn't ask the question back to the future, right? So just imagine you're getting into the car, you're 20, 30 here, and you're being asked to do a keynote speech about how your industry...
2030 is next door. Like, is it 2030 or is it...
It's 2030. We're talking exponential, so it's going to be very fast. It's around the corner, but what will happen in those 6 years, I think it's imaginable. But maybe just starting with you, Per. So you're giving a keynote speech. It's 2030. What would you... How did your industry change? How did your industry transform? And what decision would you have to take today in order to take that fruit of the evolution?
I'm coming then from the industrialization part of that question, and what we are also kind of approaching in terms of selling our technology into manufacturing, just to make the round there. And there I see probably the only fixed asset in a factory will be the floor, the roof, and the walls. And the factories will change according to the demand. We already see the interactive floors where the machinery is moving around, the robots, and so on. And that is going to be a standard. I also believe that the 3D printing will be a big part of the business, where we produce on demand, on spot, basically changing the logistic mechanism completely worldwide. So that is definitely what I see in 2030, and I think it's going to go very, very fast. I look at our sensor business, how much sensors, thousands and thousands of sensors we are selling every day, and everything gets connected, and that's going to enable the factory of the future, and the factory 5.0 is around the corner to be that. Talking about the automotive business, I guess that sitting in a car, you're probably going to get paid to drive, or the car drive you somewhere, instead of you are paying a gasoline or the hydrogen or whatever it is, because it's a data collector. So the more data you collect, and that is what we come also from the industrial part, because we have tremendous amount of data that we can sell to other industrial part. So that is my 2030 vision.
So the same thing to you, Limor. Where are you? We had a previous conversation, and I know Limor is a great musician, and he has other ideas. But like staying in your industry, where would you see yourself 2030?
So yeah, 6 years from now, I think we are looking at fulfilling this idea of reducing dramatically the unskilled labor burden in industry, using automation, using robotics. The technology is here. There needs to be, I think, political, governmental involvement in giving extreme motivation to everybody to deploy automation as much as possible. The Chinese government did that. They had a program called Made in China 2025, where everybody was motivated, and it created a huge amount of innovation and turnover. And today there's more robots in China than anywhere else. So I think the same thing needs to be done in at least in markets that I'm familiar with, in US and Europe. And so I think 2026 we will see that happening, and so that's a key thing. Then, of course, we need to have the next ChatGPT event in robotics in order for the industry, the retail industry, to continue on the computer improvement of CPUs, improvement of memories, and so I think that today's AI will manifest itself in robotics in our home, what we call robotics. It's already there. We have, in an average home, there's probably 100 CPUs already. But that will improve in terms of the ability to do stuff, and again, reduce the idea of unskilled labor. I think will become a big issue going forward, and I think that so 2026 will be a year where we will see a lot more of this automation, on all levels.
Same question to you, Erin. What's the keynote?
So let's stay with industrialization. I could go on about all kinds of other things in my life, but what I see now is we have the easiest use cases for LLMs, which are being implemented because it's kind of the best way to learn, and it's something that's tangible, we can understand. But what's happening with LLMs now that I see is it's turning into the ability to use no code to get into programming of new algorithms, of new types of ways of looking at algorithmic problems, mathematical problems, optimizers. And so what we're going to be able to do is, if we have a reduction on the amount of energy that our skilled IT people need to put into these easier use cases that we're rolling out right now, we're going to be able to look into this hardcore nerdy aviation stuff, or and up the supply chain as well, going into how do we manufacture components differently to fit into the aircraft of the future? How do we manufacture fuel that burns clean, which is designed and created on a molecular level? These are things that currently have a very long lifetime of creating them, but what we are able to do now that we have unleashed, almost AGI, or when it comes up to 2030, that we have something closer to AGI on physics, on chemistry, that we're really able to rethink some of the products and commodities and things that we currently have in our industrial world. So this is what I think is most exciting. We're looking at quantum sensing. We're looking at, there's people all over from Graphene Society like Zena. There's all kinds of molecular materials which are going to make up our physical world in the future, which have not been invented yet, and they're going to be invented by AI, sparked on by the creative questions that humans are giving it.
So I'm just wondering also, like, what new business models will come out of? Is Bosch going to become still or be in the same business that you are right now, as Hitachi is going to be in the same business, Lufthansa and Limor. I think so many things are going to change. I mean, what we have is the data. And if you see predictions by 2027, all the real data, raw data, will be consumed by LLMs, then synthetic data will start evolving. So what is it that we bring to the value? And with that, I think I would like my wonderful panelists, I would like to thank you. I would basically encourage you to stay in touch and to reach out to these panelists, because it's about collaboration, it's about partnerships. You can't walk alone in this exponential time. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your keynote speeches soon.
Thank you very much.